Story 1. Tasted awful, burned going down. I pretended to like it, but I was confused about why people enjoyed it so much. Story 2. I don't remember. I was only a toddler. I grew up around alcohol. I used to dip my pacifier in people's drinks. It sounds like Child Protective Services should have been involved, but I actually grew up to respect alcohol. This was evident when I got to university at 18, and most people behaved irresponsibly with it. Story 3. The very first sip, and only a sip, was grandfather's old Milwaukee. Filth. I never wanted to touch it again. Vodka at about 13 years old with some V8 splash and Sprite? Oh hey, that's not bad. Story 4. I'm Generation X, so the first time I was like 2. As a high schooler, I was happy because it made my brain be quiet for the first time, and I could finally talk to people. Yeah, that led to some issues. Story 5. I accidentally took a sip from my father's rum and cola, which was about 2/3 rum and 1/3 cola. I promptly spat it across the room. I was 6 years old. I did not have any alcohol again until I was 24. I am not a fan. Story 6. I don't remember. I was probably around 10 years old. It was just like a sip though. I remember not liking champagne when I was little, but then growing to like it. The first time I tried hard liquor, I was about 14. The first time was horrible, but after that, it kind of tasted good. Story 7. As a child of the 1980s, I do not remember having my first taste, as it was never a big deal to have a sip of a parent's drink. Story 8. I drank a whole bottle of sake, threw up in the tub, and woke up 2 hours later still drunk off my tail, trying to figure out what I was going to do to stop the world from spinning. I remember my first wholehearted prayer to God that day, asking to please sober me up. It was horrible. Story 9. It was a Coors Banquet beer and I hated it. I have since grown to very much like beer, but still not this one. Story 10. Had my first beer at 12, a Belgian brown Abbey Ale. Enjoyed it a lot. Now at 41, I am a spoiled beer enthusiast. Story 11. This tastes terrible. Maybe if I keep drinking it, it will get better. Then a wave of super serum hit and I felt like a king. All of the problems I ever had with myself felt like they were going away. I told myself, if I just had one more, I would be perfect. I drank for 12 years afterward and am currently 1.5 years sober. Story 12. The first sip of alcohol I ever had was my dad's Budweiser, and I told him it was nasty and tasted like soap. Budweiser is still nasty, but I definitely grew up to love beer. Story 13. Got hyper but probably crashed out. Too young and not enough for a buzz for my body weight, if equalized in ratios to the actual first time of being drunk, which was similar. I was woken up by what I thought was a dog having a seizure. Story 14. Me. Sips first ever drink of vodka. Brain, yes, fire. Liquid fire. Excellent. Mouth. Yeah, that's smooth. Stomach. We're calling the police. Liver. Resigns on the spot. Story 15. I was 8. I liked the cider ice lollies from the ice cream man. I asked my brother for a bottle of cider for Christmas, and he got me one. It was not as nice as the ice lollies. Story 16. I was surprised that it tasted so bad. I described it to a friend as like drinking marker-flavored disinfectant. Story 17. The only way to truly enjoy it is to push mow your grass on a 90-degree day, then go pour a drink into an ice-cold mug. That really hits the spot. Story 18. One night, my sister, my mom, and I were talking. I wanted to try her wine, and she said there would not be any effects. I took a small sip and spit it out after 5 seconds. Story 19. I have never gotten drunk before, nor do I ever drink. But I was offered a drink by one of my closest friends who knows I do not drink. I ran a marathon, came back huffing and puffing, trying to grab any drink in sight. My friend offered me what looked like a bottle of Sprite, but said it had pineapple juice in it. I grabbed it and started chugging. For a moment, I thought she had given me juice that was 6 months past its expiry date. I spat it out, and she laughed and said I had drunk for the first time. It was a Corona beer. Never again. Story 20. I smoked a lot of marijuana before I tried alcohol. So getting drunk was a completely different experience. More than 40 years later, I am writing this from a smoky little bar in Shinjuku, Tokyo, on a rainy night in Japan. Things could be worse. Story 21. Basically, wow, this is it? I was still drunk and sleepy, but for some reason, I expected it to taste like sherbet or something magical. I don't know. Story 22. I was about 8 years old when my dad let me try a small sip of Smirnoff vodka. I might have spit it out in the sink because it tasted like nail polish remover. Story 23. A beer, honestly, I was questioning why people drank it. A friend said it was because it was inexpensive, but that still did not answer my question. Story 24. I was 10 years old and I got drunk with some of my grandfather's wine. All I can say is that I fell asleep on the toilet and vomited on my coat. The wine was sweet and good, but I felt horrible when the hangover hit. Story 25. The first time I tried it, I was sure I found it unpleasant. The first time I drank alcohol in high school and felt its effects, I thought, this is what I have been looking for. Story 26. People drink this beer on purpose? I must be missing something. 20 years later, I am still wondering. I would rather drink boiling Mountain Dew. Story 27. I drank rum during my high school exams because it was very cold at that time. It helped keep me warm while studying. I am not suggesting anyone try this, as I have never drunk alcohol again. Story 28. My dad let me try a sip of his beer when I was 9 or 10 years old. I thought, that's gross. Why do people drink this? That changed once I turned 18. Story 29. I had a couple of sips of beer before, but the first time I drank on my own was in a rock music pub in Spain. They sold alcohol to minors. I was 13. I was with an emo girl who wanted to drink with me, and I wanted to impress her. I had 3 shots of Jägermeister for the very first time. I felt it burning down my throat. The taste was like cologne but also sweet, and by the 3rd shot I was already enjoying it. We both ended up very drunk, but I got the kiss. As for the alcohol experience, I grew to love Jägermeister as my favorite drink for some years after that. To clarify, this is not the norm for teens to drink so young in Spain, but it is not that rare, especially considering bad influences and how easy it is for minors to get alcohol. Story 30. This is what people are throwing their lives away for? Tasted absolutely disgusting. I drink occasionally, maybe 5 times a year, but never to get fully drunk. It is only a couple of drinks, but I do not see how people can crack open a can or bottle, take a drink, and be satisfied with it. Story 31. I was very eager to try it when I was younger, but I no longer care. It tastes unpleasant and makes you feel good in the moment, but then you wake up feeling terrible. I only drink alcohol with a meal, such as wine with dinner, or when I am with friends. Story 32. Love. We finally broke up for good in 2001 when I was about to turn 40. It was a very abusive relationship and I lost a lot. Story 33. Smirnoff watermelon vodka. Oh my God. I was very sick. I do not think I drank very much, just a few shots. I ended up vomiting on the bed and carpet. After everything was cleaned, the room continued to have a faint smell of watermelon for years until the floor was replaced. The bed was a waterbed, so it cleaned up easily. Story 34. I think it was a sip of wine when I was less than 10 years old, but I don't really remember my reaction other than probably feeling a bit grown up. The first time I had a full alcoholic drink was in my early teens. My father had a tradition of having a small glass of sherry before Sunday dinner, and I was allowed to participate once I was 13 or 14. My first beer was around age 16. My parents had been doing renovations on that house, and on Friday afternoon, my mother bought a case of beer for the workers as a thank you. She let me have a beer too, so my first beer was with a group of contractors in my parents' newly renovated kitchen. Story 35. I was 11 or 12, I think. My mother's cousin's husband gave it to me. I loved it. Luckily, it never led to having problems with alcohol. Story 36. My brother gave me a sip of his Old English when I was 7. That was 30 years ago, and I have not had malt liquor since. Story 37. Stole a bottle of wine from my parents, drank the whole thing, marveled at how messed up in my head I became, threw up. The end. Story 38. It was hot damn. I was about 16. It tasted like a cinnamon disc, and it tasted good, which I did not expect. Also, I did not immediately turn into an alcoholic like I had always been told. Story 39. I thought it was grim with a horrible taste. Then, when I had a proper drink with friends at about 15 years old, I loved it because all my social fears went away. Fast forward 15 years, and I have been in Alcoholics Anonymous for over a year and just got out of rehabilitation. I wish I had left it at my initial thought, but such is life. Story 40. It was 10 years ago at this point, but definitely felt like it was going to make my life a lot more fun. Then there was the first hangover. Story 41. My dad used it as medicine for us as kids. A single whiskey and Coke, no faster than 20 minutes to drink, cured most of my headaches. Whiskey on the gums for toothaches. Vodka on wounds to sterilize them. I grew up to have a small problem with it, but I have learned moderation since. Story 42. That's not apple juice. My dad had poured his beer Miller High Life in a glass. I thought it was apple juice and tried to steal a sip. No. Story 43. Back in the early 1980s, contact lenses cost hundreds of dollars each. We did not have that kind of money to throw around, but my parents got me a pair because I begged for a year. When a contact lens fell out, you were instructed to put it under your tongue until you could get it safely into solution. My contact lens fell out. I put it under my tongue and swallowed it. My parents gave me 2 room temperature old Milwaukee beers and told me to chug. They were going to get that expensive contact lens back. I giggled all the way. I had permission to chug alcohol at age 14. It was disgusting. Yes, I vomited beer foam. No, we never found the expensive lens. I was not much of a drinker in teenage party circles thanks to that experience. The 1980s for Generation X were something else. Story 44. The first taste was chocolate with a liquor filling. Puckered my mouth, but the taste was intriguing. The second taste was apple cider that I did not know was alcoholic. I loved it. The extra flavor was new and exciting. I had my first beer a couple of years later and did not like it at all. But just like coffee, I found myself wanting to try it again eventually. It grew on me, and it is still my favorite alcoholic beverage. Story 45. It tastes unpleasant. I did not want to drink more of it. That's about it. Same for coffee, all types of alcohol, cigarettes, weed, and so on. Story 46. I had already spent my entire childhood resenting it, especially after my cousin was killed by a drunk driver when I was 14. People convinced me to go to a party, and I ended up, with no prior knowledge or experience, drinking half a large bottle of ice-cold vodka, thinking it was like water until someone seriously warned me about the danger. My reaction was to vomit on a couch and vow never to do it again. Story 47. My dad gave me a sip of his beer when I was 5, and it tasted horrid. By the time I was 15, I had acquired a taste for it. Do not worry, I have never gone over the edge. Story 48. I was about 14 when my nephew stole a Corona beer from his dad, and we tried it. It was disgusting. That sip ensured I did not try any again until I was 21, when my friend took me out to drink on my birthday. Then I discovered hard liquor. Story 49. I drank some Heineken when I was 9 and I did not really like it. At 17, after the homecoming dance, I was drinking Goldschlager, Kettle One, Absolute Grape, and other liquors straight from the bottle. That was the first time I got very drunk, and it was an intense experience. I continued until about halfway through senior year until I got caught and my car was taken away for a month. Overall, it was a memorable experience. Story 50. It was the beginning of the end of my honesty. It was the answer to all my problems. I was no longer shy. I felt like I could do anything. Nothing was too scary to try or face. It was the solution. Years down the road, it has become the bane of my life. Everything it fixed, it now has broken. I honestly wish I had never tried alcohol. It is a life changer and not for the better. Anyone reading this, take heed in what I write. Drinking is no joke and a slippery slope. That is my take on it all. Story 51. It was okay. It is a stupid, sloppy high, and I do not understand why people drink. I have never had a sip of beer in my entire life. Story 52. I was 17 years old and had a beer. First, it tasted very sour, but I managed to drink it. Then I fell asleep very quickly. Story 53. It made my tongue numb, and I also had much more difficulty following conversations. I had no energy and struggled to stay awake. All I wanted to do was sleep. Story 54. A bottle of inexpensive Belgian beer when I was 11. I thought I was great holding the bottle, but then I tasted it and thought, ugh. Story 55. Got completely drunk at my friend's house and ended up throwing up out of his second-floor window. Story 56. I felt warm, perhaps a little tingly at the very surface of my skin. However, I did not have the typical buzz or tipsy feeling for some reason. I was fully aware, and it was as if I had not drunk at all except for what I mentioned before. Does this happen to people at all? I have always wondered why alcohol never affected me much the first time, or if I am overthinking some nonsense. Story 57. Tasted very unpleasant. I remember clearly that I said it tasted like bitter urine. I don't understand why people become addicted. Story 58. Gag. What the heck does that taste like? It burns. I do not know if I would do that again. Sure, I will take another. I am not a wimp. Less burn, still nasty. All right, one more, that is it. Dancing. Story 59. Yum. It was brandy on a cotton swab, so my mother could pull out my baby tooth. I was maybe 7 years old. Funny, I do not drink at all now. Story 60. I was a kid. We were served half water, half wine starting very young. Same with coffee, half milk, around age 7. I didn't taste full-strength alcohol until about 13. It was also wine, and I liked it. We were served small cordials at holidays and allowed sips, just one, of whiskey, brandy, or scotch as kids as well. I didn't drink in high school. I was an athlete and only smoked cigarettes, as my family grew tobacco and everyone I knew smoked. In college, I drank a Zima, yes, I'm that old, or maybe 2 or 3 of those, and got sick. I have never developed a taste for that type of drink or for beer, either. To be honest, it didn't taste great. It got you drunk, and that was the whole point. Story 61. I was 7 years old and throwing a tantrum because I wanted to drink the golden-colored drink in my dad's mug. He gave me a sip of his beer. I did not care for it. I did not care for it much at 18 either. Story 62. When I tried for the first time, I said, this tastes unpleasant. But nowadays I say, this is not for me. I have tried many drinks, but my body simply says no. Story 63. Around 12 years old, I snuck a drink of my uncle's Corona beer. Tasted horrible. I remember wondering why they willingly drank that. Story 64. I hated beer because it tasted bad, but I liked mixers. As I got older, alcohol now gives me hangovers. So, I basically only drink on occasion. Being drunk around others can be fun, but alone, I hardly feel it, and it is boring. Story 65. I was 6 years old and mom made daiquiris. One pitcher was for the adults, and the non-alcoholic daiquiris were for the kids. We finished our drinks and went for seconds. We were found passed out in front of the television watching Bugs Bunny. Story 66. I got drunk with my friend at her house when we were 15. Her mother was a heavy drinker and consumed a lot of alcohol. I started feeling dizzy and bumping into the furniture. Then I fell asleep. I had a severe headache when I woke up about an hour later. Story 67. A 14-year-old went to the drive-in movies with their older cousins. They all had beer. The 14-year-old drank 2 beers, which were terrible. They threw up an hour later many times. The cousins all laughed. Story 68. I grew up watching cowboys ask for whiskey after a long dusty ride. The first time I tried it, I wondered what it was and how it could possibly quench thirst. Story 69. So gross, but I just kept drinking any and all of it. Peer pressure is a powerful thing. It led me down a road of misery, but I thought I was having fun because of social encouragement. I began to think I could not have a fun time without it. What a waste. Story 70. Not sure about overall alcohol. I do remember the first time I had bourbon neat. I was heading to college and had some with my dad. I thought it was the worst thing ever. Now I love it. Story 71. It was a hot afternoon when I was a kid going to the fridge for a sip of water. We normally stored water back then in used bottles of liquor. I opened the fridge, but the light inside did not work. The kitchen was lit, but the light was blocked by the fridge door. I had to pick a bottle and hope it did not have alcohol inside. So I reached into the fridge and grabbed the coldest bottle. My naughty self did not use a glass back then, so I just drank from the bottle itself. I drank almost the amount of a cup until I realized I had just drunk that amount of wine. I got so scared that I ran into my room and went to sleep. When I woke up, it was already 6 o'clock in the evening, and I felt like the world was shrinking around me. I think that was my first time in a hangover-type situation. My honest reaction? I thought that was water. Story 72. I was 4 or 5 years old when I took a sip of my father's beer. I did not like it at all. 9 years later, I found 4 beers near a high school under the football bleachers. I tried one warm and almost vomited. I chilled the other 3, got a buzz, and liked it. Story 73. At first, I did not really like it, specifically the taste and the effect of it. I really wonder why most people become alcoholics when it tastes bad. Story 74. Pretty sure my first beer was a Rolling Rock. I did not care for it. Since then, I have found beer I do like and also liquor. When it comes to alcohol now, I consider myself a snob even though I rarely drink anymore. Story 75. Burned my mouth with a toasted marshmallow and accidentally drank warm beer thinking it was soda. It did not help. Story 76. The first memory was my formative years, drinking cheap cider, Caffrey's, and Jack Daniels. I was less of a fan of Jack Daniels back then and definitely enjoyed the Alish. I was told that my first experience of alcohol was having whiskey rubbed into my gums as a baby to combat teething pain. Story 77. It's a running joke that we kept accidentally exposing my daughter to alcohol. Some instances were genuinely not our fault, such as the unopened jug of fruit juice from the store that had somehow started to ferment in the pantry. Story 78. I would usually be given a small glass of Mateus Rose or Blue Nun with Sunday lunch. Does anyone remember Top Deck? 2% alcoholic drinks aimed at kids. I drank 6 of those on holiday when I was 10, which may have contributed to me falling into the swimming pool dressed as a knight. Story 79. It was unpleasant, but maybe do not have whiskey as your first try. However, I am still not an alcoholic beverage drinker. I only like fruity drinks that do not have a strong alcohol taste. Story 80. Yes, sir, that tastes terrible. May I have another? After 2 decades of drinking almost every night, on average, less than 1 sober night per month, I am currently 76 days sober. Story 81. My mom had a heart attack. My parents told me alcohol was poison if you were under 21. I was about 7 years old. We were on vacation. I grabbed my mom's margarita instead of my Shirley Temple because I was so focused on reading Harry Potter. I didn't look, took a sip, and realized it was the margarita. I panicked, ran to the bathroom trying to make myself throw up, and screamed to my parents to call poison control. My mom then explained that alcohol is only poison in high doses and explained why. Story 82. I had my first taste of my dad's firewater when I was probably around 5 years old. I vividly remember taking that first drink out of his red cup in the lower level of our split-level house. I didn't start to lose control of my drinking until my mid-20s. When I took my official first drink at 21, I felt like a different person and suddenly I had friends. Social anxiety, girls, parties, events, no problem with a little bit of liquid courage. Fast forward just a little bit more, and I find that I am a late-diagnosed neurodivergent person who is easily influenced by dopamine. Story 83. I had an angry orchard and thought it was pretty good. By the third one, I felt my first ever tinge of drunkenness and thought it was pleasant but did not want to overdo it. Story 84. The very first time I tried alcohol was a sip of my grandmother's beer when I was a toddler, which I remember clearly. She put salt on the rim of the can, and I really liked that. The first time I fully drank alcohol as a teenager led to violent vomiting and blacking out. I couldn't drink Jack Daniels for many years after that. Story 85. It was much more enjoyable than the first time I was given chewing tobacco. That experience did not go well at all. Story 86. This is fun. I'm a little dizzy. I feel sick. I'm so sick. I can't even lift my head off the bathroom floor. I'm never doing this again. 2 weeks later. This is fun. Story 87. The first thing I tried was beer. It had a very new and unique taste. I did not like it at first, but it did not taste overly toxic like liquor did the first time. Nowadays, I love beer. It actually tastes great, especially good beer. I dislike liquor unless it is a simple mixed drink like rum and Coke. Story 88. That was unpleasant. I still feel that way about most drinks that are not wine coolers, sangria, margaritas, or other mixed beverages. Story 89. Grossed out by it. If I remember correctly, it was champagne and it tasted very weird and strong. I think I was around 17. Nowadays, I love alcohol. I love the feeling of it, and it also gives something special to the drink. I do not know if it is the moment or the flavor, but I love it more than I should. Story 90. It tastes unpleasant, and I have never understood why people drink it. I am in my late 20s and still feel the same way, but it is fun to get intoxicated on occasion. Story 91. Burning going down was followed by an inner calm that led to a lifelong habit with often bad life choices and consequences. Story 92. Hated it. Pretended to drink it. Acted like myself. People thought I was drunk. Gained respect from others. And I decided not to drink again. Story 93. That's it? I eventually learned I have a naturally high tolerance. I could not figure out what everyone was so excited about. Story 94. The sleep. When I was 14, my dad let me have 2 Coronas while he was hosting a cocktail party. I had fun, and the other adults seemed more fun to me too. But what I really remember is waking up the next day and thinking to myself, I fell right asleep last night. No tossing and turning like I was accustomed to my whole life. So when alcohol became a major problem for me in my 40s, I was gravely concerned that I wouldn't be able to get to sleep, even though I wasn't sleeping well anymore when I was getting up to drink every few hours. Well, 5 years sober, and it turns out I sleep like a baby after getting up early and being productive all day. Story 95. I remember feeling embarrassed to ask for alcohol, though I still don't know exactly why. I got my dad to do it, and he bought very weak alcohol in a can. Obviously, I didn't want that, so my older sister came back with some French vodka. Honestly, being drunk is not everything in the world. The best way to describe alcohol is that it makes someone feel emotions more strongly. Drink enough, and you might not remember whatever you said or did, which is kind of scary to think about. When I drink alcohol, I stick to my limit. Story 96. I was 17. I tried wine and vodka on a trip. I did not like the wine, and vodka felt too strong. I have not drunk any form of alcohol since then. Story 97. I thought it was very cool. I was 10 years old, and my father had me take a sip of rum, purse my lips, and blow it out as a mist into a fire. We were camping, and my mother was upset. Story 98. I just smiled because I was 7 and everyone was watching me. I thought it tasted good. It was green apple crown. Story 99. It was a Jägermeister. I immediately spit it out and chugged a bunch of water to get the taste out. It was awful. It made me feel sick to my stomach and caused vomiting for hours after the night was over. Story 100. I dislike the taste of it. It burns and is almost bitter. I do not know how people voluntarily drink this. Story 101. Depends. If it is something light like beer, I would say, not that great of a taste. But if it is something more like whiskey, I would say, wow, that is gross. The smell is really strong. Story 102. I was 4 or 5 when my dad let me have a sip of Coors Light. It was gross, and a few hours later, I walked into his room and vomited on the floor. My mother started scolding him. I distinctly remember looking and saying to myself, I should have seen this coming. Story 103. 22. Gay bar the night of my best friend's Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints wedding. Had an apple martini. It is like a jolly rancher that hates you. Story 104. It was an absolute thrill. I loved everything about it, and many of the behaviors of the elder males in my clan started to make sense. I really wish I had pursued it as my career, but those types of jobs and microbreweries did not exist back then. Story 105. It was horrible. Maybe because I tried only the liquor. It was unpleasant. It almost made me think about never trying it again. But now I only drink margaritas. Story 106. My first experience was a sip of Bud Light. Tasted unpleasant. However, I enjoyed my first real drink at a party at Do-Over Prom. I got tipsy on a few Jell-O shots and had a good time. I learned that I am a giggly, childish drunk. Story 107. House party. Booked a cab home. In the back seat, I could feel the car swerving viciously left and right, but he was not. Strange experience. Story 108. I had a sip of beer and wine when I was about 10 and was disgusted. When I was 15, my friends and I got some Burnett's vodka and Fireball whiskey. We were just starting to smoke cannabis around the same time, so it honestly felt similar to cannabis to me, especially because we only had about 2 small shots. Story 109. Beer was not for me. It still makes me feel sick after just a few sips. Then I discovered Jack Daniels, and everything changed. I do not really drink anymore, but I feel like there were a few years when I single-handedly financially supported the distillery. Story 110. Burning, bitter, poisonous feeling. It is unpleasant. People who drink alcohol have negative effects. It does nothing beneficial for you. Do not lie and say it is good. There are no possible benefits to drinking it. It is not even a religious matter. What is the point? Story 111. I was a baby crawling around stealing beer from grown-ups who left their beer on tables I could reach or on the floor. I imagine I thought it was delicious. My mom got photos of me when they caught me stealing their beer. The grown-ups noticed their cans were getting empty too fast. They caught me crawling under chairs and stealing a taste. They stopped me by putting a glass of whiskey on the floor. I stole that and then stopped drinking until I was 15. It was a traumatic event. Story 112. This tastes unpleasant. Why do people like this? And yet, I still became an alcoholic in college. Story 113. I was 16. It was Jose Cuervo. It was disgusting, and I got very sick. I like tequila now, but Jose Cuervo tastes like swamp water. Story 114. After the first drink of alcohol, it was my escape from reality. I had always been in denial. 9+ years sober. Story 115. First got buzzed at 15 or 16 at a party. Absolutely loved the feeling. I did not have access to alcohol at home, so it never became a problem. Story 116. I was allowed small sips of beer, usually a Guinness, probably the same as any kid. As I grew up, I occasionally had a sip or a small drink of my own, but I never abused it. I am from the United Kingdom, so it is very common to have drinks while growing up. Story 117. There is tasting alcohol, such as bleach, which is unpleasant and not recommended, and then there is trying the effects of alcohol. I was about 10 years old when I stayed at Jamie Reynolds' house. His mom and her boyfriend passed out, and we decided to drink a 6-pack of Budweiser. We ended up running around and having a loud pillow fight until we were laughing too much to stand up. Story 118. I understand why there is the Irish curse. It unlocked something ancient inside me. Generations of my family are alcoholics. My uncles, my dad, my grandpa, and great-grandpa all consumed alcohol, mostly in the form of binge drinking, which heavily affects the body and liver. However, in my teens, I realized that this was not for me. I rarely consume alcohol, but could not avoid the opiate boom of the late 1990s and early 2000s. Both alcohol and opiates are central nervous system depressants and fall into the most harmful category of many substance abuse classifications. Knowing full well about addiction in my family, I tried heroin in the early 1990s, and it was my calling. That really clicked for me. Having trauma in my youth and dealing with anxiety and depression, everything melted away with opiates into a warm hug of relief. I totally understand dependency and the long-term effects. I also sympathize with alcoholics. As far as substances go, alcohol destroys you. It has to be the most costly addiction. It literally is poison and will bring you to your knees. Unlike most drugs, alcohol is just 5 minutes away at your corner store. For an addict trying to quit, that must be very tempting. You don't have to wait to score, easy access. Story 119. I think it was my first time, about 16 years old, not feeling stress. It made me relax. It is a wonder I did not become an alcoholic. Story 120. Had my first sip at 15 or 16. My aunt let me have some of the wine she was drinking. It was not bad because it was not that strong and it was fruity, so I guess I liked it. I just turned 21 3 months ago, and I have discovered that I prefer fruitier drinks because things like Don Julio, no matter what kind it is, even when they are mixed with something, are unpleasant. Story 121. I was 7 to 8 years old and felt a strong burning sensation. It was a mug with vodka, but the adults forgot to tell me about it. Story 122. Honestly, I took one sip and thought, why do adults pretend this tastes good? Like, you all bullied us for drinking juice boxes and then turned around and sipped gasoline with a splash of regret. It was a warm national light at some sketchy house party, and I remember trying to look cool while my taste buds filed a formal complaint. I genuinely thought it was a prank. Like, haha, welcome to adulthood. Here's mouth sadness. But peer pressure is a powerful motivator. So I smiled like an idiot and said, not bad. Then immediately chased it with orange soda like a toddler at brunch. Now, I still think 80% of alcohol tastes like disappointment, but I've learned to fake it better. Story 123. I was disappointed. How can someone enjoy drinking this type of drink? Unfortunately, I am now that someone who enjoys drinking this type of drink. Story 124. It is really unpleasant. I have always hated it. Drunk uncles and aunts mumbling, hot unpleasant breath close to my ear, ruined birthday parties. I dislike alcohol culture, where people compete to get the most intoxicated and label those who do not drink as boring or uncool. Like, you have totaled 3 cars and hurt your girlfriend when you were drunk. And I am the boring one? My uncle died of liver failure. Doctors told him if he stopped drinking, he would be okay. But obviously, he did not. Story 125. I don't remember the first time, but when I was about 14, I tried to sneak a beer that was left over from Thanksgiving the next morning when everyone was still asleep. I went out on the back porch and took one sip, only to instantly spit it out because it was a nasty India Pale Ale. I poured the rest out. When I was a teenager, I would occasionally sneak a shot of whiskey from my mom's stash if I thought I could get away with it. I liked the warm feeling in my chest, but never took enough to really get buzzed. The first time I got drunk, I was 19, drinking with my dad. I liked it. I didn't figure out what I liked to drink until I was 21 and could buy my own stuff. I like whiskey, gin, and rum. Story 126. At first, I was disgusted, but since I was new to the group, I drank more just to be the chill one among the friends. Story 127. I can't remember. I was only 1 year old. I grabbed a glass of champagne from the table and drank it. Story 128. I remember liking it, though it burned. It was amaretto, pretty sweet, so I guess it makes sense that I liked it. Story 129. I was 6 months old, sipping a little bit of beer from my parents. They told me that I wanted more. I am German-Polish. Story 130. I was a 16-year-old apprentice mechanic. The tradition was that at Christmas all the mechanics would go to the pub and have a merry time. The apprentices, being unaccustomed to such festivities, would become a target for unusual generosity and receive many alcoholic drinks. I somehow found my way back to the garage afterward, vomited copiously, then rode my motorcycle home. I remember very little of it. Story 131. I have only tried to drink it a couple of times. My older brother, who was a heavy drinker and smoker, made me try it. I hated it so much that I did not try it again for many years. Then it was wine. I still do not drink because I have seen too much damage caused by it. Story 132. It was tequila, and I thought it was delicious from the first sip. Beer took longer to acquire a taste for. Story 133. I do not remember my first time. I remember a couple of later ones. Yes, it was bad. I did not drink anything heavy. It was just wine, but it was still terrible. I did not like it. Story 134. I wondered why I did not get drunk from the first drink and proceeded to drink until I vomited. The next day, I did it again. Story 135. Alcohol is gross. Coffee too. We just dress them up with sugar or mixers so we can pretend they taste good. But deep down, we all know they do not taste good. The only reason we drink them is peer pressure in disguise. I only drink to get drunk. The first time I tasted it, it was straight up garbage. Story 136. Drank over half a bottle of vodka in probably less than 10 minutes. Ran around like a hyperactive person, went back to my friends and passed out on his electric blanket. Felt like I was sleeping in a cloud. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.